I never thought my life would change so drastically in a single day. My name's Keisha, and I was just your average 28-year-old woman living in Atlanta. My husband Marcus and I had been trying for a baby for years, and finally our dream came true. The day I went into labor, I was nervous but excited. Marcus held my hand as we rushed to the hospital, both of us imagining the beautiful brown-skinned baby we'd soon be holding. But life had other plans. After hours of painful contractions and pushing, I heard my baby's first cry. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The room went eerily quiet. I looked at the doctors, then at Marcus. Their faces were a mix of shock and confusion. "What's wrong?" I asked, my heart racing. "Is my baby okay?" The nurse hesitated before placing a tiny bundle in my arms. I peeled back the blanket, eager to see my child's face. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat. My son, my beautiful, healthy son, was white. Pale skin, wispy blonde hair, and bright blue eyes stared back at me. I looked up at Marcus, expecting to see the same love and wonder I felt. Instead, his face was twisted with anger and disbelief. "This isn't my child," he spat out, backing away from the bed. "You cheated on me." My world shattered in that moment. How could this be happening? I'd never been unfaithful. Not once in our 5 years of marriage. But how else could I explain our son's appearance? As Marcus stormed out of the delivery room, leaving me alone with our newborn, I realized this was just the beginning of a long, difficult journey. Little did I know, the truth behind my son's unique appearance would remain a mystery for years to come. And it would take an unexpected encounter in this very same hospital to finally unravel the secret that tore my family apart. But for now, as I cradled my precious baby boy, I made a silent promise. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I would love and protect him with every fiber of my being. The first few weeks after bringing my son home were a blur of sleepless nights and tearful days. I named him Elijah, a name that means my God is Yahweh. I figured we'd need all the divine help we could get. Marcus hadn't come home since storming out of the hospital. His silence spoke volumes. I tried calling, texting, even showing up at his workplace, but he refused to see or speak to me. It was like I'd become a ghost in his life. Meanwhile, Elijah was thriving. Despite the chaos swirling around us, he was a happy, healthy baby. His giggles were like music, soothing my battered heart. But every time I looked at his pale skin and blue eyes, I couldn't help but wonder, how was this possible? I took Elijah to several doctors, searching for answers. They ran tests, took samples, and scratched their heads. The results always came back the same: Elijah was 100% my biological child. But how he ended up looking so different from me remained a mystery. As word spread about my unusual situation, I faced judgment from all sides. Family members whispered behind my back, neighbors stared and gossiped, and strangers on the street did double takes when they saw us together. "Are you the nanny?" one woman asked me at the grocery store. "No, I'm his mother," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. The look of disbelief on her face stung, but I was getting used to it. I learned to steel myself against the stares and comments, focusing instead on the precious bundle in my arms. One particularly tough day, I broke down crying while feeding Elijah. Through my tears, I noticed him reaching up, his tiny hand patting my cheek as if trying to comfort me. In that moment, I realized something profound. It didn't matter what anyone else thought. This was my son, and our bond was unbreakable. I made a decision then and there. We couldn't stay in Atlanta, surrounded by painful memories and judgmental eyes. It was time for a fresh start. With nothing but a suitcase full of clothes and a diaper bag, I boarded a bus headed for New York City. As the Georgia landscape faded behind us, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find acceptance in the diverse melting pot of the Big Apple. Little did I know, our journey was far from over. The city that never sleeps had both challenges and unexpected blessings in store for us. But for now, as Elijah slept peacefully in my arms, I allowed myself to dream of a brighter future, one where we'd find the answers and acceptance we so desperately craved. The bus pulled into Port Authority, and I stepped out into the chaos of New York City with Elijah strapped to my chest. The noise, the crowds, the towering buildings, it was overwhelming. But beneath my fear, there was a spark of excitement. This was our chance to start over. Finding a place to live was our first challenge. With limited savings and no job, our options were slim. We ended up in a tiny studio apartment in the Bronx. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I'd always dreamed of being a writer, so I started freelancing while Elijah napped. It wasn't easy juggling work and a baby, but somehow we made it work. Every small success felt like a victory. As Elijah grew, so did his curiosity about the world and about himself. I'll never forget the day he came home from preschool. His little face scrunched up in confusion. "Mommy," he asked, "why don't I look like you?" My heart ached, but I'd prepared for this moment. I sat him down and explained as simply as I could. "Baby, families come in all shapes and colors. What matters is the love we have for each other." He seemed satisfied with that answer, at least for now. But I knew tougher questions would come as he got older. New York's diversity was a blessing. In our neighborhood, mixed families were common. For the first time, we didn't stand out. Elijah made friends easily, his sunny personality shining through. One day at the playground, I met Sarah, another single mom. Her daughter Zoe was Elijah's age. As the kids played, Sarah and I got to talking. Before I knew it, I was pouring out my whole story. Instead of judgment, I found understanding in Sarah's eyes. "Life's messy," she said, squeezing my hand. "You're doing great." That friendship became a lifeline. Sarah helped watch Elijah when I had deadlines, and I did the same for her. We formed a little support system, two moms against the world. Years passed, and life settled into a rhythm. Elijah was thriving in school, showing a talent for art. I'd published a few short stories and was working on a novel. We were happy, but there was always a nagging feeling, a piece of the puzzle missing. I still had no answers about Elijah's unique appearance. And sometimes late at night I'd wonder about Marcus. Where was he? Did he ever think about us? I had no idea that fate was about to intervene, bringing us face to face with our past in the most unexpected way. A routine doctor's appointment was about to change everything, forcing us to confront the mystery that had shaped our lives for the past 7 years. As I tucked Elijah into bed that night, I had no clue that our world was about to be turned upside down once again. But this time we were stronger, ready to face whatever came our way together. It started with a cough. At first, I thought it was just a cold. But when Elijah's fever spiked and wouldn't break, I knew something was wrong. We rushed to the emergency room, my heart pounding with worry. The doctors ran tests, their faces growing more serious by the hour. Finally, a kind-faced physician sat down beside me, her eyes filled with concern. "Miss Johnson," she said gently, "we've found something unusual in Elijah's blood work." My world seemed to tilt on its axis as she explained. Elijah had a rare genetic condition, one that affected his pigmentation and made him more susceptible to certain illnesses. It was treatable, but he'd need specialized care. As I tried to process this information, the doctor hesitated, then added something that made my breath catch. "This condition, it's incredibly rare. In fact, I've only seen it once before, years ago, in another patient. A man." My heart raced. Could it be? After all these years, was this the answer we'd been searching for? "Do you remember his name?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She shook her head. "I'm sorry, I can't disclose that information. But if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, it might be worth looking into your husband's medical history." Marcus. The name I hadn't spoken aloud in years echoed in my mind. Could he have had the same condition? Was this the key to understanding Elijah's appearance? As Elijah recovered in the hospital bed beside me, his pale skin even more noticeable against the white sheets, I felt a mix of emotions wash over me. Relief at finally having some answers, fear for my son's health, and a growing determination to uncover the full truth. I knew what I had to do. It was time to find Marcus. But how? He disappeared from our lives completely. I had no idea where he was, or if he'd even want to hear from me after all this time. As I stroked Elijah's hair, watching him sleep peacefully, I made a decision. For his sake, I had to try. He deserved to know his full medical history to understand where he came from. Little did I know, fate was already in motion. The very hospital where we sat held secrets that were about to come to light, bringing our past crashing into our present in ways I could never have imagined. As I settled in for a long night by Elijah's bedside, I had no idea that just a few floors away, another patient had just been admitted, one whose presence would change everything. The pieces of our puzzle were finally falling into place, but the picture they would reveal was beyond anything I could have ever expected. The next few days were a whirlwind of tests, consultations, and worry. Elijah was responding well to treatment, but the doctors wanted to keep him for observation. I barely left his side, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair and surviving on vending machine coffee. On the third day, I desperately needed a break. Sarah had come to sit with Elijah, so I decided to take a quick walk to clear my head. As I wandered the hospital corridors lost in thought, I wasn't paying attention to where I was going. Suddenly, I collided with someone coming around the corner. I looked up, an apology on my lips, and froze. It was Marcus. 7 years had passed, but I'd recognized those eyes anywhere. He looked older, tired, and just as shocked to see me as I was to see him. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the busy hospital fading away around us. Then he spoke. "Keisha." His voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" I struggled to find my voice. "Elijah, our son, he's sick." Something flashed across Marcus's face. Concern? Guilt? Before I could decipher it, a nurse approached him. "Mr. Johnson, we're ready for your treatment now." Treatment. The word echoed in my mind, connecting the dots. Marcus was a patient here too. As the nurse led him away, he looked back at me. "Wait here," he said. "Please. We need to talk." I nodded, my mind reeling. After all these years, after everything that had happened, here we were, in the same hospital, both dealing with medical issues that might be connected. I found a nearby waiting area and sat down, my legs shaky. What were the odds? Was this the universe's way of bringing us back together? Of finally providing the answers we'd been seeking? As I waited for Marcus to return, my thoughts raced. How would I tell Elijah? What did this mean for our future? And most importantly, would Marcus finally believe the truth? That he was Elijah's father? I had no idea that the conversation to come would reveal secrets neither of us expected, changing our lives forever. The truth was far more complex than I could have imagined, and it was about to come to light in this very hospital. As I saw Marcus approaching, I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would either bring closure or open old wounds. Either way, I knew our lives would never be the same after today. Little did I know the biggest surprise was yet to come, one that would challenge everything we thought we knew about ourselves and each other. Marcus sat down beside me, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the weight of 7 years of separation hanging between us. Finally, he broke the silence. "I owe you an apology, Keisha. I should have listened to you back then. I should have stayed." I nodded, feeling a mix of anger and relief. "Why are you here, Marcus?" He took a deep breath. "I have a rare genetic condition. It affects my pigmentation, makes me more susceptible to certain illnesses. I've been coming here for treatment for years." My heart raced. It was exactly what the doctor had described for Elijah. "Our son," I said softly. "He has the same condition." Marcus's eyes widened. "Our son? You mean?" "Yes, Marcus. Elijah is your son. He always has been." Tears filled his eyes. "But how? He doesn't look anything like me. Or you." I explained what the doctors had told me about Elijah's condition, how it affected his appearance. As understanding dawned on Marcus's face, I saw years of guilt and regret wash over him. "I didn't know," he whispered. I assumed. "You assumed I'd been unfaithful," I finished for him. "You left us without even considering any other possibility." He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "I was wrong. So terribly wrong. Can you ever forgive me?" Before I could answer, a doctor approached us. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, we have some news about your son's condition." We listened in shock as the doctor explained. The genetic condition Elijah and Marcus shared was incredibly rare. In fact, it was so rare that it had only been documented in a handful of cases worldwide. "There's more," the doctor continued. "We've been doing some research and we've made a fascinating discovery. This condition, it's not just about pigmentation. In extremely rare cases, it can cause a complete shift in apparent racial characteristics." My mind struggled to grasp what she was saying. "Are you telling us?" The doctor nodded. "Yes. Genetically, your son is a perfect mix of both of you. But this condition has caused his appearance to be dramatically different from what we'd typically expect." Marcus and I looked at each other, stunned. All these years, all the pain and separation, all because of a medical condition we'd never even heard of. As the doctor left us to process this information, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. Relief at finally having answers. Anger at the years we'd lost. Hope for what the future might hold. Marcus reached out, tentatively taking my hand. Keisha, I know I have no right to ask this, but can I meet him? Can I meet our son? I hesitated, thinking of Elijah. He'd grown up without a father, and now suddenly here was Marcus. How would he react? But I knew deep down that Elijah deserved to know the truth. He deserved to have a chance at a relationship with his father. Okay, I said softly. But we do this slowly on Elijah's terms. As we stood to walk to Elijah's room, I realized our journey was far from over. We had years of hurt to overcome, trust to rebuild, and a little boy who needed both of us. But for the first time in 7 years, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could become a family again. Little did I know the biggest challenge was yet to come, helping Elijah understand and accept this sudden drastic change in his life. The walk to Elijah's room felt like the longest of my life. My mind raced with questions and concerns. How would Elijah react? Would he accept Marcus? Was I doing the right thing? As we approached the door, I turned to Marcus. Wait here for a moment. Let me talk to him first. I entered the room, finding Elijah sitting up in bed, coloring. He looked up, his blue eyes bright. Mom, look what I drew. I sat on the edge of his bed, my heart full of love for this amazing little boy. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Listen, there's someone here who wants to meet you. It's your dad. Elijah's crayon stopped mid-stroke. He looked at me, confusion and curiosity battling on his face. My dad? But you said he was gone. I took a deep breath. I know, honey. It's complicated. But he's here now, and he'd like to meet you. Is that okay? Elijah nodded slowly, his eyes wide. I went to the door and motioned for Marcus to come in. The moment Marcus saw Elijah, tears welled up in his eyes. Hi, Elijah, he said softly. I'm your dad. Elijah studied Marcus intently. You look like me, he said finally. Marcus nodded, moving closer. Yeah, buddy. We have the same condition. That's why we look different from Mom. Are you sick too? Elijah asked. Sometimes, Marcus admitted. But the doctors here help me feel better. Just like they're helping you. As I watched them interact, I felt a mix of emotions. Joy at seeing them connect, sadness for the years lost, hope for the future. Over the next few days, as Elijah recovered, Marcus was a constant presence. He read stories, played games, and answered Elijah's endless questions about his life and their shared condition. One evening, as Elijah slept, Marcus turned to me. Keisha, I know I have no right to ask this, but I want to be part of his life. Part of both your lives, if you'll let me. I hesitated. The hurt from his abandonment still lingered. It's not that simple, Marcus. You left us. How do I know you won't do it again? I won't, he said firmly. I've learned from my mistake. These past few days with Elijah, they've shown me what I've been missing. I want to make it right. I sighed. We'll take it slow. For Elijah's sake. As Elijah's health improved and we prepared to leave the hospital, I realized our journey was far from over. We had years of lost time to make up for, trust to rebuild, and a new family dynamic to navigate. But watching Marcus and Elijah together, seeing the joy on both their faces, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could make this work. As we walked out of the hospital, Elijah holding both our hands, I knew we were stepping into a new chapter of our lives. One filled with challenges, yes, but also with the potential for healing, growth, and love. Our unusual family had been torn apart by misunderstanding and a rare medical condition. Now, armed with knowledge and a second chance, we were determined to build something beautiful from the pieces of our past. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but as I looked at Marcus and Elijah, I knew one thing for certain: we'd face it together as a family. The transition back to everyday life was a roller coaster of emotions. Elijah was excited to have his dad around, but also confused and sometimes overwhelmed. Marcus was eager to make up for lost time, but often unsure of his place in our lives. And me? I was caught in the middle, trying to balance everyone's needs while protecting my own heart. We decided to take things slow. Marcus found an apartment nearby and started visiting regularly. At first, it was just for a few hours at a time, helping Elijah with homework, joining us for dinner, or taking him to the park. One day, about a month after leaving the hospital, Elijah asked the question I'd been dreading. "Mom, is Dad going to live with us now?" I sat him down, choosing my words carefully. "Honey, your dad and I need some time to figure things out. But he loves you very much and wants to be part of your life." Elijah nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "Is it because of how we look? Because we're different?" My heart ached at his question. "No, sweetheart. It's not about how anyone looks. Grown-up relationships are complicated sometimes. But I promise you, both your dad and I love you more than anything." As the weeks turned into months, we fell into a new routine. Marcus became a constant presence in our lives, and I found myself slowly letting down my guard. Watching him with Elijah, seeing the love and dedication in his eyes, helped heal some of the old wounds. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. We had our share of arguments about parenting styles, about the past, about our expectations for the future. Each disagreement was a reminder of the trust we still needed to rebuild. One night, after Elijah had gone to bed, Marcus and I sat down for a serious talk. "I want to make this work, Keisha," he said. "Not just for Elijah, but for us. I know I hurt you, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me." I took a deep breath. "I want to believe you, Marcus, but it's not easy to forget those years of silence, of raising our son alone." "I understand," he replied. "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking for a chance to prove myself, to be the partner and father I should have been from the beginning." As I looked into his eyes, I saw genuine remorse and love. I realized that holding on to anger wasn't helping anyone, least of all Elijah. "Okay," I said softly. "Let's give this a real try." That conversation marked a turning point for us. We started counseling both as a couple and as a family. We learned to communicate better, to address our fears and insecurities, and to put Elijah's needs first. Slowly but surely, we were becoming a family again. Different from before, shaped by our experiences but stronger for having overcome them. As I watched Marcus and Elijah laughing together one evening, I felt a warmth in my heart that I hadn't experienced in years. We still had a long way to go, but for the first time I truly believed we could make it. Our unique family, once torn apart by misunderstanding and fear, was finding its way back together. And I was beginning to see that our differences, in appearance and in experience, weren't weaknesses, but strengths that made our bond even more special. The journey ahead would have its challenges, but as I joined Marcus and Elijah in their laughter, I knew we were ready to face them together. As our family began to settle into its new rhythm, we faced a new set of challenges. Elijah was now 8 years old and becoming more aware of the world around him, and how our family differed from others. One afternoon, Elijah came home from school unusually quiet. When I asked what was wrong, he burst into tears. "The kids at school were making fun of us," he sobbed. "They said we can't be a real family because we don't match. They called me a liar when I said you and Dad are my real parents." My heart broke for him. I pulled him into a tight hug, feeling Marcus's concerned gaze from across the room. "Listen to me, Elijah," I said firmly. "Families come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. What makes a real family is love, not how we look." Marcus joined us, kneeling beside Elijah. "Your mom's right, buddy. And you know what? The thing that makes our family special is that we chose to be together, even when it was hard." We spent the evening talking about diversity, acceptance, and the importance of standing up for yourself. It was a difficult conversation, but an important one. The next day, we met with Elijah's teacher to discuss the bullying. She was supportive and promised to address the issue with the class. But we knew this wouldn't be the last time Elijah faced questions or prejudice about our family. As parents, Marcus and I realized we needed to be proactive. We started attending support groups for families with genetic conditions, connecting Elijah with other kids who understood his experiences. We also became advocates, speaking at community events about genetic diversity and challenging stereotypes about what families should look like. Our activism brought its own set of challenges. Some people were supportive, but others were skeptical or even hostile. We received our share of hurtful comments and strange looks. But for every negative experience, there were moments of connection and understanding that made it all worthwhile. Through it all, our bond as a family grew stronger. Elijah's resilience amazed us. He began to embrace his unique story, even giving a presentation to his class about genetic diversity. One evening, as we sat together looking through old photos, Elijah asked, "Do you think things would have been easier if I looked more like you guys?" Marcus and I exchanged glances. "Maybe in some ways," I admitted. "But then we wouldn't have learned all the important lessons we have. And we wouldn't be the special family we are now." Elijah nodded thoughtfully. "I'm glad we're different," he said finally. "It makes us special." As I tucked him into bed that night, I marveled at how far we'd come. From the shock and confusion of his birth, through years of separation and misunderstanding, to this moment of acceptance and love. Our journey was far from over. We would face more challenges, more questions, more moments of doubt. But we would face them together, as a family united by love rather than divided by appearances. As I joined Marcus in the living room, I felt a sense of peace. Our family might not look like others, but it was ours. And that was more than enough. Little did we know life had one more surprise in store for us. One that would test our newfound strength and unity in ways we never expected. As Elijah approached his 10th birthday, our lives had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Marcus had moved in with us and we were finally feeling like a complete family. But life, as we'd learned, is full of surprises. It started with a phone call from the hospital where Elijah was born. They were conducting a long-term study on rare genetic conditions and wanted to include Elijah. We agreed, thinking it might help other families in the future. During one of the routine checkups for the study, the doctor pulled us aside with an unexpected question. "Have you ever considered having another child?" Marcus and I exchanged glances. We'd discussed it in passing, but hadn't seriously considered it given our complicated history and Elijah's unique needs. The doctor continued, "We've made some fascinating discoveries about your genetic makeup. There's a possibility that if you had another child, they might have the same condition as Elijah, or they might not. It's a unique opportunity to study how this gene expresses itself." We left the hospital that day with our heads spinning. The possibility of another child brought up a whirlwind of emotions and questions. That night, after Elijah was asleep, Marcus and I had a long talk. "What do you think?" I asked him. "Are we ready for this?" Marcus took my hand. "I missed so much with Elijah. The idea of being there from the start, of giving him a sibling. It's tempting, but it's a big decision." We decided to involve Elijah in the conversation. His reaction surprised us. "A baby brother or sister?" His eyes lit up. "That would be so cool. And if they look like me, I could teach them all about our special genes." His enthusiasm was infectious, but we still had concerns. What if the new baby didn't have the condition? How would that affect Elijah? And were we prepared to potentially face the same challenges and prejudices all over again? After months of discussion, doctor's appointments, and soul-searching, we decided to try. The journey wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, fear, and anticipation. But 9 months later, we welcomed our daughter, Zora, into the world. As the nurse placed her in my arms, Marcus and Elijah crowding close, we all held our breath. Zora opened her eyes, revealing a warm brown color that matched my own. Her skin was a beautiful caramel tone, a perfect blend of Marcus and me. "She's gorgeous," Marcus whispered, tears in his eyes. Elijah leaned in, studying his baby sister intently. "She looks like both of you," he said, a note of wonder in his voice. In that moment, looking at our beautiful, diverse family, I felt a profound sense of completion. Elijah with his pale skin and blue eyes, Zora with her brown eyes and caramel skin, and Marcus and I in the middle, we were a living testament to the complexity and beauty of genetics. As we brought Zora home and settled into life as a family of 4, we faced new challenges. Explaining to others why our children looked so different, dealing with intrusive questions, and ensuring both kids felt equally loved and valued. But we also experienced incredible joy. Watching Elijah take on the role of protective big brother, seeing the love between our 2 children blossom regardless of their physical differences. It was everything we could have hoped for and more. Our family's journey had been filled with unexpected twists and turns. From the shock of Elijah's birth to the pain of separation, from reunion to growth, and now to this new chapter with Zora. Through it all, we'd learned that love, understanding, and acceptance were the true foundations of family. As I watched Marcus reading a bedtime story to both kids, Elijah hanging on every word while Zora gurgled happily in his lap, I knew that our family's unique story was far from over. But whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, bound by a love that transcended genetics and defied expectations. Our family might not fit the traditional mold, but it was perfect in its own beautiful, unexpected way.